I'm a big supporter of intercollegiate athletics. It not only provides a tremendous venue for our students, it also provides a point of pride and a point of tremendous interest and support for our alumni. And so coming into the job here, I already was a major believer in the role that intercollegiate athletics could play in the health and growth of a university. Well, the first meeting I ever attended as president of the university was in the spring of after I was hired at Easter, and then Jerry asked if I would come back and work on the budget for the coming year. He was going to remain president through commencement, but he said, you need to have your fingerprints on what the budget's going to be. I was flying back here for one of those budget meetings, and he said, Ed, there's a meeting of the CSIC conference in Kansas City. Why don't you go? And that was the meeting that Pittsburgh, Washburn, the Missouri schools all voted to leave the conference. I had no idea it was on the agenda. I had no idea that it had been a discussion for years. It was a real battle between the NAIA commitment and the NCAA Division II. Those schools wanted to go NCAA Division II, and the Missouri schools were being pressured by the other Missouri schools to join them in a conference that was the Mid-American Collegiate Conference. And so I'm sitting there thinking, what did I do? I just got here, and now all of a sudden they're voting, and Emporia and us and Kearney and Wayne State and Chadron, I think, were left out in the cold. The rest of the institutions left. So when I first got to campus then in the summer, we had one more year, and then the conference was falling apart. So I had that first year here to try to find. So I looked south, Lone Star Conference, and they were not at all interested in having Fort Hays. It's too far away. I looked east, and of course they had just taken Pittsburgh and Washburn and the other schools. They weren't wanting to take any more schools. There was some interest from the Northern Sun Conference, but they weren't interested in coming all the way to Kansas. So the only possibility we had was to look west. And so the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference, which was one of the oldest conferences in NCAA history at any divisional level, was having real trouble. A lot of the schools had stopped playing football because of budget reasons, and they were basically Colorado-based conference, and so they were thinking they were in real dire straits as far as being able to continue to operate as a conference for football. They would come if they could get more than just Fort Hays. So I went to Emporia, and Glennon was the president, and of course he's in the same boat we are, and I said, would you be willing to go to the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference? There was no choice. The answer is yes. So I went to Bill Nestor, the president up at Kearney, and I said, are you willing to go? And I thought if I could get those two to go, then, Wayne State and Chadron, those institutions would go probably because they didn't have a choice. We put together this package, and we joined the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference, and in effect saved it, because we now have a 10-team football schedule, and our basketball was large enough that it meant you didn't have to worry about a lot of non-conference games. I mean, it was pretty successful. That's the reason why everyone said, why did you go NCAA Division II? Because that was your experience? It wasn't. The only conference it would take happens to be an NCAA Division II conference. So it wasn't I was anti-NAIA. It was just it was the only option we had. All along, though, I think I knew Emporia was constantly looking east, and if anyone dropped out of the MIAA, they would rather go and play their traditional rivals. And in all honesty, if we ever had the chance, I knew we would go that way because we needed to be playing Emporia and Pittsburgh and Washburn again. After we got the conference issue settled, the one area that we really needed to improve in if we were going to be competitive as we move from NAIA into the NCAA, is our football program. To be competitive, we needed to improve facilities, we need to improve our players, we need to improve our coaching, a number of coaches. So we made a commitment in 1991 to get that done. And so we moved the press box over to the other side of the field because otherwise you're looking right into the sun. We went from grass to artificial surface because we were having trouble getting grass to grow on Lewis Field because we were also hosting Friday night football, either TMP or Hayes High every Friday night, and then Fort Hays on Saturday. And if we're going to attract great players, we got to have good playing surfaces. The coaching issue was one that we needed to deal with. And I said, let's go out and hire the best football coach in the conference. Well, Bob Cortez was doing very well and winning conference championships at Mesa State. And I convinced him that we were committed to really improving and he would have a better chance to be successful, not only in the conference if he came to Fort Hays, but we were better equipped to compete in the NCAA tournament that they have at the end of the season. The RMAC winner always would get in, but we never did very well once we got into the tournament. But we had the resources, we had the facilities now, so he came. And he had a very successful run at Fort Hays. And until Coach Brown had the best winning percentage of any coach in modern football at Fort Hays and did it against NCAA Division II competition, not NAIA competition. Hiring Coach Brown was a major step forward. He had played NCAA Division II football at the highest level at Pittsburgh State, was an All-American. He had coached at Washburn in the NCAA and in our conference. He knew our conference well. Plus, he was from Western Kansas. So, being from Liberal, that's a tremendous competitive advantage in recruiting Western Kansas kids. We're taping this now in 2022. And when Chris and his team walk on the field in late August, early September for the first game, he will have tied for the most games coached as a Fort Hays football coach at 115. Chris and Bob Cortez are both winning at about 2/3. So he's the winningest coach in Tiger history right now and will be the longest serving coach when he gets into next season at Fort Hays State. And I think everyone sees the advantage of having football as a major sport. Basketball was not a question. We historically have been good in basketball. We continue to be good in basketball, but the one sport we really had to improve was football. We were moving from NAIA to NCAA Division II to go into the Rocky Mountain Athletic Conference in 1991 when our women qualified for the NAIA National Championship, and we went to Memphis and competed for the championship and won it. So that was our last NAIA basketball event that we played in, was the national championship there. The star of our team in Memphis was Annette Wiles. She got the MVP award for the national championship tournament. But after we won the championship, John, the coach, came to me and said, we've got to get to the CBS affiliate. They're going to put us on the sports, and they're also going to broadcast it back to Hays. I had a rental car, a town car with all leather seats in it. And so we had like 5 minutes to get from the arena we were playing in to this TV station. And so John was riding in the right seat. I was driving as fast as I could, and he's telling me, well, cut through here, go this way, go that way, and I'm turning. Poor Annette's in the back seat. She's got her warm-ups on. Those warm-ups were made of some sort of polyester kind of material. She would slide from one side, and I'd see her in the rear view mirror slide over to the other side. Then when I turned it back, she would slide back the other way. And to this day, she tells stories about how her life was passing in front of her eyes as she just won the national championship, and she didn't think she was going to live long enough to really enjoy it because we were driving so crazy to get to the station for that interview. The basketball program's always been successful here, even back to the days when I was in college. The Fort Hays basketball program was always pretty successful. But the run that we had in the mid-90s with Gary Gardner as our coach is probably the one that meant the most to me. The team itself was developed by just a bunch of unique circumstances. The NCAA had tightened up the rules on eligibility for Division I, especially as it related to transfer students. But Division II, the rules hadn't changed. So now the way the rules are laid out, there's no way that Simpson would be here. There's no way that Alondo would be here, Pope would be here. Those outstanding players that we had on that team that we picked up as transfers, two of those came from community colleges in that window that now is closed. And we recruited just a great group of young men. They had a chemistry that is not always there. Even when you got great players, you don't have the right chemistry. And I have to give credit to Jeff Eck. I think he had a lot to do with setting that standard. Kramer, who was point guard on the team, all of them had a tremendous desire to not lose. It wasn't to win a championship. They just didn't want to lose. And then to be able to take a team back to Louisville and had lots of fans make the trip, and it was just a tremendous experience, and beat Northern Kentucky in a great game, final game, to win the national championship. And now, I think in the Final Four of that tournament, we're the only one that's still Division II. We had a tremendous team. It was an amazing, amazing run. I remember the baseball team going to Montgomery and playing in the college Division II College World Series, and what a tremendous opportunity that was. An athletic program is only as successful as its resources in some ways. You've got to have enough resources to support it. And I believe in a simple philosophy: if you can't do it first class, don't do it at all. When I came here, Title IX was beginning to be a major factor in decision-making for NCAA institutions and NAI institutions. There are 3 tests for Title IX, and one of them is proportionality, which means that you have equal proportions of everything. So the number of scholarships you have for women is equal to the number of scholarships you have for men. The kind of resources you make available for student athletes in softball are exactly the same kind of resources and things you have available for baseball. But the other option is what they call the student interest. So if you have student interest at a certain level in a particular sport, you need to offer it. So when I came here, we were out of balance. So we added women's golf. The decision had already been made to eliminate gymnastics before I got here, but it kind of occurred while I was arriving. And the reason why gymnastics never really worked is there was no really high schools that did full-fledged gymnastics programs. There was also no one in our conference that was doing gymnastics. We looked at the interest survey data for a number of years, and nothing really changed. Then all of a sudden, about 10 years ago, we began seeing soccer showing up in the interest survey. And at the same time, we were looking at the demographic change of Western Kansas and the Hispanic community's growth in Western Kansas and the state of Kansas, and their tremendous interest in soccer. So there were a lot of reasons that helped drive the last sports that I participated in, adding to our group of sports. And right from the beginning, I was committed to doing both. We were going to do men's and women's at the same time. And now it's a very popular sport on campus, and it's been probably one of our most successful sports in the last few years. From a combination sport of men's and women's, I think clearly the most successful combination we've got. And because we made a commitment to a facility and coaches a year ahead of time that could get out and recruit, once we got into playing, we were really competitive right from the get-go.